Welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're looking at a concept that is so powerful, yet so incredibly simple, it's going to completely change how you look at your daily spending. The $10 a day secret nobody tells you. I am absolutely thrilled to share this with you because we're going to see how reaching $1 million retirement doesn't require a lottery ticket, a massive inheritance, or some crazy lucky break. It really just comes down to small, almost unnoticeable daily actions. We're going to break down the exact math step by step. Let's get right to it.
All right, let's kick things off with section 1, the income myth.
Okay, let's dive into this. What if spending just $10 less a day literally made you a millionaire? I really want you to sit with that for a second. We're not talking about grinding out 80-hour work weeks here. We aren't talking about starting a disruptive tech startup or clawing your way to the top of the corporate ladder. You could absolutely achieve this millionaire status without ever getting a single raise for the rest of your career. I know, no way, right? It sounds impossible. But it entirely comes down to just a tiny shift in your daily habits.
Because, look, the absolute foundation of everything we're exploring today is this. Most people think getting rich is strictly an income problem. We constantly tell ourselves, man, if I just made 100 grand, or if I could just snag that next promotion, I'd be set. But a high income combined with high spending, that just leaves you running faster and faster on the exact same treadmill. Wealth isn't about earning more. It is entirely about what happens to the money you already have. It's about retention, and more importantly, it's about action.
And the core engine behind that action? Well, as the famous quote goes, compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. Now, this is widely attributed to Albert Einstein, and honestly, whether he jotted it down on a chalkboard or just said it in passing over coffee, the gravitas of that statement is 100% justified. Compound interest is absolutely the hero of our explainer today. It's like this unseen, underlying force of physics in the financial world. Once you grasp it, literally, everything changes. So, let's move right into section 2, the $10 secret. Here's the setup, and we're keeping the parameters super simple. We are going to invest exactly $10 a day over a month. That comes out to roughly $300. We're taking that money and putting it into a broad index fund that averages a 10% annual return. Now, just to be clear, that 10% isn't some random pie-in-the-sky number we pulled out of thin air. It is roughly the historical average of the stock market over the last century. We're keeping this strategy simple, steady, and historically grounded. All right, what happens when we start the clock? Well, after year 1, you've got about $3,800. And I really want to pause here for a second because this is exactly where most people just give up. You sacrificed a daily luxury, maybe it was a fancy coffee or a subscription, for 365 days in a row, and you look at your account and you only have $3,800. The growth looks totally flat. It's frankly unexciting. You might even look at this and think, why am I even bothering to sacrifice for this? But, patience is the entry fee here. Let's see how this builds. Boom. Now we're at year 10, and you have roughly $62,000. Notice how the pace is starting to shift now? Over a decade, you've actually only contributed about $36,000 of your own money from that $10 daily habit, but you're sitting on over 60 grand. That initial snowball effect is finally taking hold. The friction of those early days, it's starting to melt away as the market does the heavy lifting for you. Now, let's fast forward to year 30. Over $680,000. Okay, now we are getting into massive, life-changing territory. The math is quite literally catching fire. Remember, you're still just putting in that same boring $10 a day. You haven't increased your effort one bit, but the output is becoming extraordinary. You're well past $500,000 at this point, but brace yourself, because the final jump is the one that's going to completely break your intuition. Year 40, over $1.9 million. You are brushing right up against $2 million, and it was entirely generated from skipping $10 a day. That is a staggering final outcome. Your growth trajectory goes from this gentle little slope to an absolute rocket ship pointing straight up. So the obvious question here is, how on earth did we get from $680,000 in year 30 to nearly $2 million in just 10 more years?
Well, that question brings us perfectly to section 3, the exponential twist.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what's going on under the hood. Think about your total wealth accumulated from year 1 all the way to year 30. That's 3 full decades of disciplined saving and growing. Now compare that to the financial jump just from year 30 to year 40. Let that sink in for a second. The wealth growth you experienced in that final 10-year window was actually larger than the first 30 years combined. It is absolutely mind-bending. So why does this happen? The core mechanic here is that compound interest isn't linear, it is exponential. Your money earns money, and then that money earns money. It's a massive self-feeding loop. Early on, your $10 is doing all the heavy lifting. But by year 30, your interest is making significantly more money in a single day than you ever could by just saving your $10. Basically, your capital has hired an army of workers, and those workers are out there hiring their own workers.
And this perfectly proves that time is infinitely more valuable than heavy late-stage investing. Take a scenario where someone starts early. They invest for just 10 years in their 20s, and then they completely stop. Done. Now compare that to someone who starts late. They invest for 30 solid years, but starting in their 40s. Because of that exponential twist we just talked about, the early starter mathematically overpowers the late starter. The person in their 20s can actually end up with more money at retirement simply because they gave that exponential curve way more time to steepen.
Which leads us right into section 4, your next move.
Now, we definitely need to pause for a quick reality check here. This is absolutely not a get-rich-quick scheme. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a get-rich-slowly and inevitably strategy. Markets go up and markets go down. That 10% figure we used, that's a long-term average, for sure not a yearly guarantee. Some years you might be down, other years you'll be up significantly. But the ultimate key, the principle that holds this whole strategy together, is that time in the market consistently beats trying to time the market.
So the crucial point is this. The $10 you skip on coffee today could be the exact reason you retire a full decade earlier. We've been talking about almost $2 million, we've analyzed decades of market time, but it really just collapses down to a single, relatable daily choice. The fundamental question isn't, how do I make a massive salary so I can finally start investing? The real question is, how early can you start? Every single day you wait just pushes that massive exponential curve further and further out into the future. You don't need a fortune to build a fortune. Start now. Future you will definitely thank you. That wraps up our explainer for today. I really hope this completely changed your perspective on what's possible with the money you already have.